What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a new video, and today we're going to be doing something super fun because we're going to be doing a brass shootout between a few different brass libraries that I personally own. I have 4 libraries, and we're going to be comparing CineBrass from Cinesamples, and then we're going to be looking at Cinematic Studio Brass from Cinematic Studios, followed by Berlin Brass by Orchestral Tools, and JXL Brass also from Orchestral Tools. So, just a little disclaimer before we get started. All of these libraries are very rooted in the cinematic vein. And that kind of just means, like, if you're looking for a Hollywood sound, if you're looking for something that would work well in a film setting, these libraries would all be top choices personally for me. That's why I invested in these libraries. Now, JXL Brass I did receive as an NFR copy from Orchestral Tools for review, so I'll be doing a video on that in the following weeks. But yeah, let's just get started. So I wanted to compare kind of 3 of the brass sections from each library. So the trumpets, the horns, and the trombones. I think that'll give us a nice balance between the different instruments, and you can kind of see where the strengths and the weaknesses of each one lie. Okay, so let's start right off with CineBrass. I chose CineBrass first because it's usually my go-to brass library, especially for the type of music I write. I write a lot of uplifting kind of Disney epic music. So let me just play through the instruments a little bit, and you can get a sense of what they sound like. So I'll start with the staccatos. I'm just going to move my microphone a little bit here. Okay, here we go. So the way it's mapped out actually is that when I turn the mod wheel all the way down, here the staccatos are very short, but as I turn it up, it's all the way up. So basically, the lighter I press, the shorter the staccato is going to be. So it's like staccatissimo. If I press a little bit harder, you get a longer short. So it's like a staccato, a regular staccato. So about halfway down, you know, it's not too short. If I press very, very lightly, it's very short and biting, you know. But if I press hard, then you get what they call a half note short or a marcato short, basically. And then when you press the pedal down, it activates true legato, and they also have poly legato. So you can go into settings and press poly, and then you can do that. So let me show you mono first. Okay, let's try some poly legato here. So you can really tell why I like this library. I mean, the sound is just fantastic, and with the more recent updates, they've introduced adaptive legato. So basically, at the speed which you play, the legato speed basically can follow you pretty well. So that's the trumpets. Let's go to the 6 horns. So I'll start with the shorts again. Play a little bit longer. And finally, the marcatos. And then some legato. So you can hear the legato struggling just a little bit there. So if I turn up the speed and I lower the intensity a little bit so we hear the legato transitions a bit less, so it keeps up a little bit better there. Let's move on to the trombones here. So the shorts first. Okay, and then legato here. So if I had to describe the library, I would say the dynamic range is actually very good. There's nothing that screams trailer to me, especially in CineBrass Core. In CineBrass Pro, they have the 12 horns, they have the low monster brass. That stuff you can use more for trailer stuff, but it's very solely intended for just the classic Hollywood sound, which it really excels in my opinion. And so that's why for me, it's kind of my first choice, usually when I'm writing uplifting Disney style music. But again, sometimes the legato can have a little bit of trouble keeping up. I mean, this library is a little bit older. It was released in 2011, and then they've released updates since then. But Cinematic Studio Brass came out 2 years ago now, I believe. So let's start with the trumpets. I'm trying to keep the section sizes as consistent as possible as well. So if we go down to Cinematic Studio Brass, actually, where is it? Right here. These are the ensemble sizes. So 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, and then the rest are solo instruments. So here is the trumpets here. So we'll start with legato. Now with the mod wheel all the way down, by the way, it basically fades to silence. So you could turn off that feature, the niente feature, but in my case, it's fine. So it really soars up there. They really sampled the higher dynamics in this case, which I really love. I love the legato. It's just super playable, very reminiscent of Cinematic Studio strings, which of course we know the legato is fantastic there. Let's carry on. Staccattissimos. So, oops, I'm gonna lower the mod wheel here. So. So it is quite short, but if we go all the way down here with the repetitions, you see, and the tail cuts off. So when I did my review of Cinematic Studio Brass, I kind of demonstrated how the tail just cuts off. So it's actually meant for quick playing of repetitions. So you could do that. One cool thing you can do is do a bunch of repetitions and then roll up the mod wheel and then go to a staccattissimo, which actually has the natural tail. So you can have. And so your last note is a staccattissimo, so then you have a slightly longer note, plus you get the tail of the room, which sounds quite nice as well. So there we go. That's the trumpet section. Let's go into the horns. So again, we'll start with the legato, mod wheel down. and you can hear the fading between the different dynamic layers is also quite smooth. Okay, so some staccadissimos. Okay, repetitions. So that's kind of nice. Cool. All right. And then finally the trombones. So sound like this. So again, this very roaring fortissimo sound, they really capture those rasping tones in the brass, which is really nice. And yeah, so some of the standout features for this library is, well, the legato first of all is very nice, very very playable. There's a tiny bit of delay, but for me it's barely even noticeable because I'm so used to Cinematic Studio strings, and this one's not that much different. So yeah, legato is excellent. The staccatos and the shorts are sufficient. You know, they do their job very well. And if you want super short notes, then just go with the repetitions first, and then you can end off with a staccatissimo or even a staccato or sforzando short. And yeah, and another plus is that they really sampled the softest dynamic layers all the way to the very top. So Alex and his team did a very comprehensive job with this library. Okay, let's move on to Berlin Brass. So this is Orchestral Tools' flagship Berlin series library with their brass. I'm going to start with the trumpet ensemble legato. So here we go. Okay. So we don't really get the roaring like raspiness as we do with Cinematic Studio Brass, but it's still very serviceable, and it works really well for a morning tone. Especially if you're doing a longer melodic line, I would say this patch works very well. The staccatos, in this case, I pulled up the staccatissimos. These are nice and punchy, so you get. So you really hear the Taldex Hall in this case, and that's because we only have the tree mics loaded up. But a very crisp, very clear tone, just like Cinesamples. I feel like Cinesamples, the tone is just a little bit more upfront and bright in your face, whereas in the Taldex Hall, the instruments sit just a little bit further back, and you get more of this wide ambient sound. So what I usually do in my Disney cues is I tend to use CineBrass for the leading instruments, for the striding tones, and then I tend to use Berlin Brass, kind of their short patches, and sometimes if the legato patches need a little bit of emphasis and some help, then I'll layer them underneath for that extra ambience and extra width in the sound. Because CineBrass really excels in a clear and just open, bright sound, whereas I think Berlin Brass strikes a very nice balance between CineBrass and Cinematic Studio Brass, because CSB, Cinematic Studio Brass, is a little bit on the darker side. So if you're looking for more of a mellow sound and something that's a little more reserved and pulled back, then Cinematic Studio Brass might be a good one to go for. So let's go on to the horns legato here. So here we go. And that the tail is just gorgeous. So yeah, it's not like triple forte or anything, but it's still, you know, it's about, I would say, forte. Definitely a beautiful sound as well. Staccatissimo. So yeah, just with the tree mics loaded, the sound is a little bit more pushed back in the mix. And then if we load the close, so definitely more detail there. And then if you want less of the tail, you can just turn down the tree mic. Okay, and then we have the trombones. So this is the top of the module, by the way. And I think you'll agree that this is not really fortissimo. It's kind of like, maybe even like MF, you know? But just a gorgeous warm tone, but you're not going to get the soaring dynamics with this library. And then we have the staccatissimos. Right, so a little more punchiness there in the shorts. So generally, the shorts in this library are more punchy and they're more loud. They're more aggressive than the legatos and the longs. So if you're looking for something that's really good for chorale writing, something that really sits really well in a mix, Berlin Brass will do wonders for you. And another plus is that if you're writing for classical music or for a more traditional ensemble, you'll see that they actually recorded, you know, 4 separate horns and 3 trumpets, 2 trombones, pretty much a standard orchestral setup. So you have all these different tones and colors to combine to create your own full ensembles if you want to. Whereas CineBrass and Cinematic Studio Brass, they come with these pre-combined combinations. And then if you want to create 4 horns, you actually have to pull in 4 instances of the solo horn, you know? So that's one of the reasons why Berlin Brass takes up so much space. I think it's something like 200 something gigabytes of storage space, whereas like Cinematic Studio Brass is somewhere around 30 or 40 gigabytes, and CineBrass was about 20. CineBrass Core I think was about I think it was 10. CineBrass Core might have been 10, CineBrass Pro might have been 20, or it might have been CineBrass Core being 20 and CineBrass Pro being 40, but one or the other. It's not quite as, you know, large as Berlin Brass. And then finally, we get the new kid on the block, truly the new kid on the block, who just got an update as well. Get rid of this error message. I just recently updated it as well to 1.0.2, as you can see. So the performance should be better, the sine player should run better, and everything. Let's start with the trumpets. So I'm going to start with the legato here. And this is very similar to Cinematic Studio Brass, where they actually sampled 5 dynamic layers. So you get it with the really softs all the way to the loudest peaks. And this is also from orchestral tools. So both Berlin Brass and JXL Brass are recorded at the Celtic scoring stage. So let's go. Beautiful sound there. So a nice searing sound there. In staccatissimo, this is velocity based. Very, very short, very, very punchy. And then let's hear some of the softer dynamics. Cool. Let's move on to the horns. So as you can see here, I've set up a separate MIDI channel for each of these, and I went to the articulation list and remapped them with key switches. So let's do the horns here. A little bit of cracking there, but no, not a huge deal. So the module was at the very top there, so let's compare that with the CineBrass Studio Brass horns. Sorry, I think I have to just want to compare the dynamic range for a second. So CineBrass Studio Brass, we have the sustains. Here we go. So I'm not on the right channel, clearly. And that's both with the mod wheel all the way up. Okay, so actually CineBrass Studio Brass has a little bit more raspiness to it at the very, very top of the mod wheel. Let me play that same line one more time, just have a listen to this. This is JXL Brass. So it sounds a little bit more creamy in a way. It's a little bit more polished, a little bit more smooth, whereas CineBrass Studio Brass has a tiny bit more of a raw sound to it. Also keep in mind, here I'm using the Alan Meyerson mix. So if you take a look at the mic remote, you can see I'm using the tree mic from the JXL and Alan Meyerson mix. So you get a very nice fill mix sound there. And then the staccatissimos. Okay, and then finally we have the trombones. So the trombones are pretty well known now as kind of like the standout instruments of this library, and the horns have kind of been revamped as well, the 6 horns legato. But let's just hear the legato first for the trombones here. So I should go to the trombones. There we go. Let's hear the top range of the top dynamic range of these trombones in Cinematic Studio Brass. So this is 2 trombones, I believe. In JXL Brass, it's actually 3 that I pulled up. Yeah, trombones A3. So the sound is slightly thicker, but in general, oops, sorry, go back to here. Okay, so very nice and searing dynamic range there. And then finally, staccatissimo. So again, very short. So when they say staccatissimo, they actually mean staccatissimo. It's like really, really short. Yeah, so there we go. That's kind of a comparison in the sound between all of these libraries. And if you want to just hear them again, then feel free to kind of go through the different sections. And I put down timestamps down below as well, so you can check them out at the various parts of the video. But just to do a really quick recap, I think my favorite library out of the 4 is still CineBrass, just because of the style of music I'm writing and just the immediacy and the ease of use that this library provides. Though again, the way it's set up is that there's the articulations patches, which contain the 3 short values, the 3 types of shorts, as well as the true legato contained inside. So if you press the sustain pedal, then the legato will be activated. And that type of workflow is just, it's pretty different from other libraries that we experience. So you know, you can map it the way you like, but in terms of the sound, I really like the sound. For me, it's my favorite sound out of all of them. Mod wheel's kind of down, but you hear that resonance. It's just so beautiful. And then for Cinematic Studio Brass, you also get a nice short sound, but a nice sound. But the sound's not quite as open, and there's just a little more of a film on top of the sound, whereas the CineBrass is a little bit more open. And then Berlin Brass is kind of a nice balance between the two, I think, you know. You can definitely hear the space is larger because the Teldex Hall is a bit larger. It seems to be a bit larger than the Sony stage. And as a result, the tails reflect that, you know, it's a little bit longer. And then finally, JXL Brass also has a long tail because it's recorded in the same venue, the Teldex scoring stage, but it's kind of a step up in that they have way more dynamic layers, and you just hit the top and it just sounds really, really nice and bright. So in that way, it's comparable to Cinematic Studio Brass, which I also think did a fantastic job with the dynamic range, and the crossfading in both libraries is very nice as well. So if you're looking for ease of use, go for CineBrass or Cinematic Studio Brass. If you're looking for the best tone, I would say CineBrass, and then, you know, maybe Berlin Brass or JXL, just because the actual quality is a little bit more open and clear versus Cinematic Studio Brass. But in terms of playability, I would rank Cinematic Studio Brass at the very top. It's just, you know, really, really fun to use and really playable. And in terms of the best legato, Cinematic Studio Brass has to take the cake there. I still think actually the JXL Brass lags just a little bit, even though they have their adaptive legato. But it's also, maybe I'm just used to certain libraries as well. So everyone has a different preference, but the way for you to decide on your own favorite is to kind of listen to the demos and walkthroughs of all these different libraries and just get a sense of what they all sound like. But yeah, these are just my preferences, and these are the brass libraries I own, and they cover all of my needs and more. So yeah, I hope this helped just a little bit. And if in case you're looking for, other library recommendations that I might have, I actually have a free guide down below in the description box below just for you to download. It's absolutely free, but it basically covers all-in-ones. It covers affordable options, expensive options, all the orchestral sections, sound design, choirs, all the extras and everything. So if you're looking for a guide just to lead you through the sample library market, and a lot of my favorites, then I definitely recommend you checking that out, and hopefully that helps you a little bit. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you in another video very soon. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.